put it together for my boy, my guy, my man, my dude. He is the guy I love. I could wrap my arms around Spencer Christian and never let him go. Spencer Christian, everybody.
Hey.
Hey.
He is my main guy. I feel like if Spencer Christian and I had if I'd been in New York, on the East Coast somewhere. I was in San Francisco. He was in New York. I feel like we would have been like real running buddies, like real pals, you know?
Would have for sure. No doubt about it. Yeah.
I feel like we could have explored our degeneracy together. You know, we would have both enabled each other. You know?
He would have taken all your jobs and you would have been bitter.
Yeah, but he would get you into restaurants.
He would. Let's face it.
How would you handle this?
Well,
we could try ignoring it, sir.
That he's more famous than I am. Yeah, I would have had to ignore that. It's tough sometimes. But for those who haven't heard the story, Spencer took the Good Morning America job that I was going to get if he didn't accept it. So we always like to stipulate to that ahead of time.
I will never live this down, will I?
No, it's true. It's cool. You were great, you know. Well, I was thinking about when you were on, it was Charlie, right? He was the host.
Yeah, well, actually, David Hartman was still there when I started.
Okay.
So yeah, but about a year later, then Charlie came in. So most of
David Hartman, they talk like that. Good morning, this is David Hartman. Tomorrow on Good Morning America, Spencer Christian goes into.
Making a good day. But yeah, for most of my years, it was Charlie and Joan. But but David was there when I started, and I worked with some of the true old timers, legendary family members at GMA, like Irma Bombeck and my favorite Julia Child and Arthur Miller. These are giants. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, working with you and Kim and John. So.
No, I don't think it is a come down. But let me ask you a question. I mean, this is good. You know, this is when we were on KGO radio.
What's that?
Exactly. What's that? Thank you.
That's right.
Who is having that conversation?
Well, I mention it as we could talk about a lot of stuff, and I try to feel like a little unbridled in my conversations, but sometimes I felt like I had to be a little careful, you know?
Yeah.
Here, I don't have to be quite as careful.
Great.
When you left GMA, and then you came down to, I mean, you're still, I know you're the network guy, and it's kind of fun being the network guy walking into the local, you know, and you're not a guy who's, you don't have attitude, so you're not a jerk, so people are going to like you. But was there internally, did you feel like, oh, damn, man, I really like the network?
I'm probably always going to feel that way. But
yeah.
Here's the thing. Thank you for saying what you said about me. About not being an egomaniacal jerk. There were lots of people at the local station here at KGO who were wondering what this dude was going to be like. This guy coming from the network, even though the general perception was, I think, for people who knew me on GMA, I was a decent guy. There was still some, some question about how I would interact with everybody at the local station. And then people have come up to me and told me over the years they were pleasantly surprised that I didn't bring that jerky attitude and I wasn't acting like, oh, I don't belong here, I should still be at the network. So I was warmly received, and I was happy to land at a good place after GMA. But having said that, I was devastated when I wasn't renewed at the end of my 13 years at GMA. It was a job.
What did they say to you, Spencer? They said we decided to go in a different direction, or what did they say?
Yeah, well, what happened
was there a sign that did you kind of get the buzz that it wasn't going to happen for you?
Yeah, I did have a sign. So my last full year was 1998. At the end of 98, I was non-renewed. But prior to that, in 1997, they had non-renewed Joan London's contract. And Joan was obviously, a huge contributor to the show. And they said, well, we're going in a different direction. And then in early 1998, they non-renewed Charlie Gibson. They eventually had to bring him back. But so then he was gone. Now I was the last person standing, from the old team. So I kind of thought, they're probably not going to renew me either. And then I got jerked around a little bit because my agent went to the head of ABC News at that time had said, "Are you going to renew Spencer?" And the answer was, "Of course we are." And then about a month later, I was told, "No, we're not. We're still going to go in a different direction." So,
Wild.
yeah.
Who was your agent? Let me get either Jim Griffin or Richard Liebner. No?
Actually, not. No, my agent at that time was a woman named Cynthia Riley. She
Wow.
she had her own agency, Cynthia Riley and Associates. She initially had her agency headquartered in Washington D.C., but then she moved to a big ranch out in Santa Barbara County. And
With the Spencer Christian money, she bought a ranch.
She also represented Charlie Gibson and Arthur Miller, the Harvard law professor.
Sure.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's so, and then, but the ABC7 thing happened for you fairly quickly. I mean, you're not a guy who's out of work for any length of time.
That's right. I was very fortunate. So the president and general manager of ABC7 at the time I was, winding down at GMA was Joe Ahern, who was an old friend of mine from New York. He had been a general sales manager at WABC and had been general manager of WLS in Chicago when Oprah's show took off. So Joe was, pretty powerful guy in the industry. He had just come to KGO and taken over there and KGO TV. And he called me when he heard about the rumblings that might not be renewed and said, "Is this true?" And I said, "Yeah, it's true." And he said, "Well, would you like to come out here, work for us?" I said, "Yeah." So that's how it happened.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, right.
I'm kind of a big deal.
And you're close to wine. I thought San Francisco was a really good place for you to land because you're a wine guy. You know what I mean? And so you're close to all the great vineyards all around the Bay Area.
It was a great place for me to land. I am a super wine enthusiast, as you know. And even prior to moving here, I had made many, many trips out here to visit Napa and Sonoma and other wine regions. Used to come out here on family vacations every summer as my kids were growing up. So I was familiar with the area, had friends in the Bay Area, knew my way around. It was a natural fit. It really was.
So, Spencer, I promised everyone, and it's because I was part of this as well, but it wasn't as big I wasn't making the money that you were, so I didn't kind of fly at the levels that you flew. But I mentioned our love of gambling. I mean, yours went to the addiction place, like the total addiction, like where you just are, and you describe it in your book. I mean, you just have to, you're losing everything essentially. You're borrowing against the house and you're really having to, I mean, it's scary, you know what I mean? And you're trying to keep the secret. You've talked about this before on the radio. The fact that you sort of have to keep a public persona and even the persona with the family while you're, desperate to get money to feed this addiction and to also maintain a lifestyle.
Desperate is the right word to describe it, Mark. I mean, for all those years that we're talking basically about 3 decades, there were very few days or weeks when I didn't feel a sense of desperation. Every once in a while you have the big win and, you feel like, I got this under control now. I pay off the markers and all that. But
what's the most you ever won?
In one session, somebody had a hot roll at a craps table. I won $84,000 on one session. That's not typical. I mean, typically on a good night, I could win 20 or 25,000 if things were going my way. And
in your book, I remember you describing having won that much. I think it was 30,000, but you wanted to win more, and you went out, and you're like, while the family was sleeping, kind of. This is my recollection, right?
Well, I'm sorry, our connection got a little weak there. Tell me what did you say?
In your book, you describe having won 30, I think, or 36,000, and in Atlantic City. This is at the beginning of the book. This is my recollection.
Oh, yes, yes.
But you wanted to win more. Like that wasn't enough for you. You felt like I'm hot. I want to go out, and then of course you lose it all.
Yeah. See, that's the sickness, as you know, of addiction. So it was a 2 or 3 night stay. I was there. I had arrived on a Friday. Arrived on a Thursday night. Because GMA had sent me down to Atlantic City to do a live remote Friday morning in the ring where Mike Tyson was going to defend his championship. The fight was being staged at one of Trump's casinos. So I arrived on Thursday with my family. We had a nice dinner and all that. Put the wife and the kids to bed. I went out to play craps and I won $40,000 that night. Wow. 40 grand, right? So I went back to my room and I couldn't sleep. I was like wired. I couldn't wait till the next day to get back and get into action again. So I did the remote the following morning. In one of my segments, I had Don King in the ring with me. The next segment, I had Donald Trump, the other Donald.
Wow.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah. Wow.
No, that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you tired of winning yet?
And this is their new hoax.
Yeah. So you're there. You talk to Don King, then Trump. This is a big fight. You've won $40K. Okay.
Right. And can't wait now after the broadcast. Can't wait to get back to the casinos to gamble some more. But during the day, I was sensible. I spent time with my family, hung out with the kids and all that, and took my son, who was at that time 13, to the fight with me. We had ringside seats, like 3 rows back. Wow. But then once Tyson got rid of his opponent, then I took my son back to the suite, and I went out and gambled, and I lost back on that night. Lost back all of the 40 grand I had won the night before, and that's the sickness of this addiction. It's never enough. Never enough.
That's just it's.
And then all the way home, in the limo, all the way back home the next day with my family. I'm just like beating myself up inside, like, you stupid idiot, you fool, what are you doing? Why couldn't you just pack up and leave after the fight? Right.
And it's tough. And I think being someone with family there, I mean, and actually there with you, it puts additional pressures on you, because you don't want to be the kind of morose guy who's downcast and an a-hole to your family, or you know what I mean, like short or and unfortunately, it does begin to infect your emotions a little bit. And your family, even though you tried, your family did begin to notice that you were troubled, right?
Yes, they did. So my wife noticed it more than the kids, obviously, because the kids were younger. But the kids were old enough to understand that Dad just couldn't stay away from the tables. I mean, well, here's the weird thing. I think most people who had an addiction like that, especially gambling, because it chews up so much of your time and energy, don't really spend a lot of quality time with their families. My kids continue to tell me that I was so involved in their lives, I don't know where I found the energy to do it, that they never felt like they were being neglected, but they still worried about me because they realized that I was spending excessive amounts of time in the casino. So even though I would show up at the kids' soccer games and all that, and when I take the family with me to one of these weekend casino getaways, I would hang out with them and go to the amusement center with them and have dinner with them and all that. But they also recognized that once they went to the suite to go to bed, I was up all night gambling. And then when I would come in first thing in the morning at 7 a.m. after gambling all night, so I could have breakfast with them, they were happy to have Dad there with them. I wasn't absent, but I was tired. Sometimes I was cranky. It's just a weird cycle I was involved in there. I was caught up in. I can't believe I survived it physically and mentally, because I invested so much of my time and energy in that. I wasn't sleeping much over those 30 years, but here I am.
I mean, and lastly, we'll move on. Our last couple of minutes with Spencer Christian, but I see what John Daly's put up. Spencer Christian, ABC7 weather forecaster, and GMA Victor. He's like, he will not let go of the fact that you got the GMA gig and I didn't get it.
I won't let go of it.
Yeah, no, I would not have. I would not have put that.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
At some point, we've talked about it. I don't need to dwell. I don't need to be on the super.
Hey, I wanted you to talk about the storm.
Why are you yelling?
I'm about to talk about the storm, John. If you'll give me a chance. I was distracted by your ridiculous super down there, GMA Victor.
Hey, facts matter.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? Anyway,
You just don't get it.
I don't. No, I don't.
You
get
don't.
it. You're right. I don't get it. All right, now, what I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted by myself is that you somehow did get past it, and I will. The last thing I'll say about it is you also were dealing with a situation that is beyond seductive. Like, I gambled a lot and still do gamble, but you were feted in all these ways. They sent limos for you. You know, they flew you in. They comped all the best wines. It's really hard to push away from that table. You know, I wasn't comped massive suites and limos and all the rest. Even though I was losing a lot of money, it wasn't on the scale that you were. And as a result, and plus I wasn't the personality that you were. You know, you're a network guy. So I think it's good for the casino to have you walking through, is my point. So it's very hard to push away from that, to be fair to you. I think that makes it an even more difficult thing to get away from.
Well, you described it perfectly, Mark. It is seductive. All the frills, you know, that are offered to the high rollers. So, you know, the limo treatment and the gourmet meals that are all comped and they're all new, of course. The casino hosts know every high roller's personal tastes. So knowing that I was a wine enthusiast, when they would comp my meal, I could order $1,000 bottles of wine, for example, and that's, you know, all comped as well. Every once in a while, the Caesar's Palace has sent a private jet to Teterboro Airport in New Jersey to fly me and a group, not just me, but a group of other high rollers out there for a weekend. It was, and you know, bring your family if you want to come out. Forget the private jet, but if I wanted to fly out for a weekend on my own, I could bring my family along and fly us all out there first class. They reimburse the first class airfare upon arrival. They reimbursed it with chips.
Wow. Yeah, of course, with chips. Right. Yeah,
right. You present the airline ticket at the cage, and they give you chips. Yeah. And a couple of the Atlantic City casinos would say, bring your wife down for the weekend. We'll give her a $5,000 shopping certificate while you're.
God, how much must you have been spending for them to offer that much, right?
Well, when you've got a $50,000, $60,000 credit line, they know you're going to go through that at least that amount. And so they don't mind giving the spouse a $5,000 shopping certificate.
Wow.
You know, and then you got to go to your casino host and go, hey, I know I went through the 50 or 60. Can you give me 10 more? Whatever. It's really brutal. So
you're down to 5% battery.
I know. Okay, let me get to the storm.
We didn't ask him about the storm. Yeah.
No, let me get to the storm now. So, Spencer, tell us about the storm and about where it is on the storm specter meter or whatever it is. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah. So, So, you know, at ABC7, we have this storm impact scale, which really does give you a clue as to how intense the storm is going to be and what its impact will be. So typically, you know, the average storm comes through is just a light storm. This is a moderate storm, but it's going to have some moments of intense storminess with it. So it'll be coming into the North Bay just after midnight. I mean, by midnight, 1 a.m., it should be pushing through Cloverdale and parts of northern Sonoma County with periods of heavy downpours. It's going to be a steady rain. And every once in a while, that steady rain will produce maybe 15 minutes of intense downpours, strong gusty winds up to about 40 miles per hour. It's going to sweep southward and eastward. That's how storms typically do. The morning commute is just going to be tomorrow. It's just going to be a mess, just a washout. We'll probably have received about an inch of rain or more in some spots by the time the morning commute gets underway at 5 a.m. So roadways are going to be they're going to have ponding and puddling, pooling, or whatever they call it. It's going to be treacherous. The wind is going to make driving conditions even more hazardous. A storm is not going to be completely out of the Bay Area until probably tomorrow evening sometime. But left behind, of course, will be saturated soil and localized flooding and maybe some downed trees and power lines because of the strong gusty wind that will accompany the storm. Then we're going to break on Friday.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but Spencer, before you leave this first storm, it's going to do a lot of good in the Sierra. But I mean, good is going to come in the form of heavy snow, so it's going to be tricky travel up there.
That's true. Yeah, tricky travel, and in fact, almost impossible travel up there, Mark, because we're talking about snow levels down to 2,500 feet, which, as you know, is pretty low, and 2 to 3 feet or more of snow for most of the Sierra around the Tahoe area. Wind gusts up to 55 or 60 miles per hour, blowing snow, whiteout conditions. So travel is not advised because it's going to be almost impossible to get in or out once the storm starts to peak.
So
someone,
sorry, I'll take a question.
What in the storm scale?
Oh, sorry. This is only a 2 on the storm scale, but I think there are going to be periods during this storm when it probably should be ranked a 3 because of the ferocious winds and the intensity of the rainfall. Yeah.
Who decides the storm scale, Spencer? Do you have veto power on the storm scale?
Well, that's a good question. There were 5 of us. There are 4 of us full-time in our weather department, and it's basically a democratic process. Let's put it that way. Because we're all on the air at different times. So, like, if I go on the air at 4 p.m. and I say, I think the storm ranks 2 on the impact scale, and I can boost it up for my segment. But if Sandhya Patel comes on later and says, I see signs of it weakening, maybe I should put it back to a 1. But we always try to, we discuss this with each other so that we don't seem to be in conflict.
So it's not a popular vote.
No, it's not a popular vote. Yeah. So, but we discuss it and we come to some agreement, and we'll say, okay, we both agree now it should be a 2, or we both agree it should be a 1. Yeah.
Has there ever been a storm scale fight?
Maybe a 2.5.
Seriously, what the?
Yeah. All right. You're gonna call that a 3?
Yeah.
No way.
I wouldn't say a fight, but I would say a strong debate.
The science is ridiculous.
A heated newsroom debate. Yeah.
I kind of make fun of it, but it's actually a really good idea, because when you say a storm coming through and you say periods of heavy rain and heavy snow, there is a spectrum in all of our minds as to what that means. And the idea that somehow you can get people accustomed to this thing that kind of rates the storm, I actually think it's a really good idea. So, and the more you talk about how you come up with the numbers, and of course, weather is constantly changing. All the computer models, every 12 hours, they rev another run, and something may have looked ferocious and 12 hours ago and maybe not as much. You do have to update that storm scale. So it's kind of cool to hear how it comes together.
Yeah, we do have to update it, and that's why you might see somebody go on at midday. I mean, Drew might go on at midday and say it's a 1, although today he had it as a 2. But if I go in at 4, and as you said, the updates have indicated not so much intensity, we'll bring it back down to a 1. But yeah, so that's pretty much how it works. But we still remain in communication with each other. For example, if I were to change something that Drew or Sandhya or one of the other meteorologists has done, I would text them or call them and say, hey, look, I just want you to know I'm changing this because I saw so and so and so. And generally they say, oh yeah, you're right. There's general agreement. It's very rare that we disagree on our analysis of
Sandhya.
I would say this, Spencer. If you need me at any point to weigh in on the storm scale, I am available. You can put me on the text.
No.
I'm just saying, I'm available. Okay.
In all seriousness, I have high regard for your knowledge of weather and your forecasting ability, and I would rely on you if I needed you. Yes.
Well, look, I didn't even get with Spencer about his Christmas plans. Are you here for that? I know we got to wrap up, but can I get one more visit with him this month, like maybe closer to the holidays? Yeah, can we do that? Okay, that would really be great. Because, I love you to death, pal, and you're so cool to hang out with us. And I have a bunch of other questions related to Christmas and personal stuff and all the rest. So thank you. Yeah.
I appreciate you guys.
All right. Spencer Christian, everybody.
Love you, Spencer.
Right on, Spencer.
Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah.
You're the best.
Good stuff.